about the science of climate change and the evolution of the conference of the parties we are coming from. So what I've done this morning is that all the slides from slide number 2 here. So that's the heading. So I've named this presentation COP26, Malaki positions, but also understanding the processes and settings of the conference of the parties. So what I'll do is I'll share this presentation with you all. Oh, what's happening? Okay. I'll share with you this presentation, which just generally talks about the climate change in context. This you can read. I'm sure you know about this science already, and about the 2 degrees Celsius issues and the 1.5, the evolution and events about climate change, where I'm coming from, starting in 1972 all the way to 1992 here, and the Climate Change Convention was adopted, and of course also going all the way to 1997 when the Kyoto Protocol was formally adopted at the COP23 in Japan, Tokyo. And there are slides that I also went through in December, but you can go through them again so that you get to understand the negotiation skills, just in case that some of you would travel to Glasgow. So this could be some tips to assist you when you want to engage in the negotiation sessions themselves. So this is all these slides talk about negotiation skills. I don't know who is bringing that noise. I think my slides, but okay. So that's all these slides talk about that. You just read this, and also how we take decisions. Okay. I've given some examples there. Now I want to come to the COP26 itself. What will happen and what are Malawi's priorities, but also how the meetings normally are organized at the Conference of Parties. You can imagine if you have, let's say, 20,000 delegates or plus, you will note that if you don't get to know what actually is happening at the conference center itself, you may spend your 2 weeks even not really understanding what is happening, because you just see everybody, people moving up and down, crossing between the rooms, and working at night, working during the day. Some are seated on coffee tables, around coffee tables, some are doing this and that. You have to get documentation about the COP itself, the daily program, some media houses wanting to interview you, and so all sorts of things, of things happening. So you may have difficulties to really understand what's happening. So I've just tried to put all this together, and as I said, you'll have a reading of the slides at your own free time. But I'll talk on those slides that I think I need to maybe concentrate on a bit more. So as we heard from a leader, the COP26 is scheduled to take place in Glasgow, Scotland, and this is under the UK presidency, picking the mantle from Chile, who was the COP25 president, the COP that took place in Madrid. And the UK is hosting this COP in partnership with Italy, and the dates are 1 to 12 November. Of course, normally some of us would always go to the COPs a week before these official days, the formal days, because we have business to undertake a week before the formal opening. Just like what is happening now, if some of you, not some, but Hendrix and GCC we registered them to participate or follow the ongoing subsidiary board sessions, meetings that started on Monday, the 31st of May, and these are running for 3 weeks until the 17th of June. So you record those days, and as I said, a week before that, to participate at the COP. We have been participating on your behalf, on behalf of the government of Malawi as a party, the Climate Change Convention, but also the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Agreement. In the year 2020, because you remember COP26 was supposed to take place in Glasgow last year, but then it was moved to November this year. So there have been meetings, virtual meetings, that of course we have been participating under different levels meaning that some of us as technicians or negotiators, but also the Honorable Minister of Forest and Natural Resources, in her capacity as Minister responsible for climate change, has been participating in some meetings that required her attention. But you may have also noted in some cases that even the head of state, the president himself, has made some inputs to the United Nations forums that have been gathering in the year 2020 and also including this year. And Malawi, being the current leader of the LDCs at the United Nations in New York, we're the global leader, and our also ambassador there at the United Nations, Malawi mission at the United Nations has also been participating in related meetings. And we have drafted a country position, which we shared with the MASP Secretariat. I'm sure they shared with you as members, for you just to go through that country position. It's always iterative. We do improve on it when we receive comments. And if you have seen it, I think that's fair and good, because it covers everything that maybe you want to know about the COP26 and also coming from where we are coming in the previous years or so, leading to this COP26, talking about the Paris Agreement issues and the NDCs, national development contributions, etc. So all those are covered in the country position. So if Hendrix or GCC shared with you, please go through that and familiarize with the contents. We may go for a meeting, maybe physically, one of these days, with country stakeholders, so that we can go through the country position and formally adopt it. And that's where we are. Yeah, this is also what I've, I think, talked about already. I've covered this about Malawi's preparations. And just to let you know that we have, as I said, been participating together with the African group, the least supported countries, and the group of 27 and China, because these are the groupings of developing countries that we belong to. And we are surely contributing to the positions of these groups. Like I'm speaking now, these 3 weeks I'm with the African group. Somewhere we are hiding, and we are working on our of course contributions to the session. This is where we are, and what your role could be is that you could contribute to the position, but also go through the agenda items that are available, and of course you are welcome to participate at the COP26 if funding is available, if you get your funding, and Okay, so if you allow me to continue, the flagship areas that we have put forward in Malawi, but also the feeding into the regional groupings of the African group, the list of countries group you also belong to, but also, of course, contributing to the overall positions of the group of Switzerland and China, which is our mother body for the developing countries. So what they speak on behalf of the 150 or so developing countries is always comprehensive in such a manner that it covers at least all the concerns of the developing countries. Of course, in one or two areas, some areas of divergence, but generally, in terms of thematic areas, we are always feeding into those groups, and these are the areas that we have picked in the country position, but also those that will make sure that we get good outcomes and decisions in Glasgow. Not in order of their priority, but somehow reflecting the key issues that we have presented. The first one is finance. You'll recall that for you to implement, or for us to implement any climate change action, be it in adaptation, be it in education, bring in energy technologies, bring in water for irrigation, anything else that you want to do, technology development and transfer, capacity building issues will require financing. So we have put climate finance as one of the areas we want to see good outcomes. And the climate finance is very broad. It contains maybe over 10 agenda items, subgroups. We have the Adaptation Fund, we have the Green Climate Fund, we have the Global Event Facility, this Developed Countries Fund, we have the support going towards the preparation of the greenhouse gas inventories, the national communications, any updated reports, technology transfer, and several other issues. And in all those, we want to see that climate finance is predictable, so you can plan for your strategies, but also it's accessible easily, it's adequate to meet our needs, but also the figures that we have are based on science to support developing countries' needs. So that's finance. And the Malawi, through me, does lead the climate finance agenda items for the list of developing countries. So I take that role on behalf of the 47 list of developing countries. Also, of course, contributing to Malawi's positions as well, and I negotiate for Malawi. Then we have adaptation issues, where if you want to invest in adaptation in the sector, agriculture sector, the energy sector, forestry sector, fisheries, human health, wildlife, tourism, etc. You also want to see that there's provision of support, climate finance, technologies, and that you have public money that is coming to our communities, to support our communities, and that this money is, of course, grants, not loans. So we always negotiate on this. And we have an agenda item on agriculture, where we want to see agriculture also being considered highly in the climate change negotiations, because you remember that, of course, agriculture for Malawi is the backbone of the economy, and we can't live without agriculture. So we need to support our systems, our households, farmers with the technologies. In the event that there isn't good rainfall, people must not die, but must also be food secure, and of course be supported with their livelihoods. Loss and damage associated with impacts of climate change. If you have followed the history happening in Malawi regarding floods, but also droughts in some years, like the 2019 cyclone Idai and the droughts and floods before that in 2015, 2016 in Tandile and other areas, you noted that there's been like damages to the infrastructure, building schools, our roads infrastructure, etc., and the people losing their crops, their livestock. And if this is attributed to climate change impacts, then we want to get support on the rehabilitation of those property damage. We have issues around mitigation, where we want to contribute to the reduction of emissions into the atmosphere. And what we want to see happening is that we want to get decisions that provide some flexibilities to developing countries like Malawi in preparing and updating our national legitimate contributions. I've always said that what Malawi can do in this NDC, the one that we have just like finished now, and we are ready to submit it to the UNFCCC, cannot be same like what Japan or the USA or even Scotland could do, because our national circumstances are different and our emissions are more in terms of adaptation. So that's mitigation. Obviously, we want to see decisions relating to provision of technology, because in adaptation in technology, the solar power, the improved cooking stoves, etc. You can mention them. Maybe electric vehicles. We are promoting use of electric motorbikes in Chileka, Malawi. We gave an award last year to some firm, and they are working on that. So in all this, you also want to see the support that is coming in from the developed countries to support that technology development and transfer. Obviously, capacity building, like what we're doing today, is capacity building to the massive youth climate leaders. And for us to undertake this, obviously, you also need support to host this meeting and allow some maybe to travel from Ronga, etc., to connect on the Zoom, so you need that support. We have an agenda item, number 8, matters relating to the list of developed countries, and I also lead this particular agenda item for the African group, and we started our meeting yesterday for the subsidiary bodies sessions, and in here we always talk about support that we want to see coming to us for the formulation, implementation, monitoring and reporting of the national adaptation plans of action, the national adaptation plans like that we are formulating in Malawi, the NDCs, and also capacity building issues. Number 9, colleagues like Linda, Chisise, and others, the CEO, maybe Kenneth Sakala here, we all say that, okay, you can't implement climate change, you can't design the projects without considering gender. And we have Madam Stella Gama from the Ministry of Forest and Natural Resources, who leads this agenda item on gender and climate change for the listed developed countries. And she's a very powerful negotiator, Mrs. Stella Gama, and she's always promoted gender balance and women empowerment, of course, and the youth empowerment in the responding to gender. Obvious global stocktake, number 10, this one is the first of its kind because of the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement 2015 said that when the Paris Agreement comes into force, starting the year 2020, we should then conduct a first global stocktake of its progress in the year 2023. So we are starting to preparing for this global stocktake that will be conducted in the year 2023, and then it will be repeated every 5 years later. So 2023, 2028, 5 years later, 2033. The reason is to take stock of what all the countries in the world are doing in terms of course, combating climate change. And number 11, transparency framework of action and support. This is a new agenda item coming from the Paris Agreement. So what we have agreed in Paris is that whatever we do in climate change, be it the designing and implementation of the projects that we have running, but also the mobilization and provision of the climate finance that we require, everything should be done transparently in a transparent manner. And we want both developed countries and developing countries to be reporting on actually what they're doing, and there are tables that we have formulated, and this we hope will be adopted in Glasgow as well, constituting the modalities, procedures, and guidelines for the implementation of the Paris Agreement. And in this, we will take stock of the finance or support mobilized and provided to developing countries to meet their climate action, but also what actually, as developing countries, we received compared to what we needed. So all this will be documented and then be submitted to the UNFCCC. So that's about the key areas that we have put forward in the country position that will be on in Glasgow. If you have questions, please you come back to me. So if you need to finish to continue, then I'll to you about the settings and processes, as I said, for you to be able to follow what's happening at the COPs with the thousands of people present. And you have to, I may have deleted the slide here for parties, but so you have parties participating at the conference where parties, it's not the political parties that we talk about, the DPP, MCP, UDF, etc. But a party, the Climate Change Convention and the Paris Agreement is a country government that has signed and ratified these treaties. So you're called a party to the convention, the party to the Paris Agreement. So you have parties, and we have around 197 governments. In fact, it's more than 200 because some of them are in groups, like the European Union is 27 member states also, they are considered as one party because it's a grouping of the EU. So about 197 of those are called parties, and every one of those is present, will be present at the conference of the parties, some with 100 members in their delegation, some with 10, maybe Malawi with 3, it depends on the funding that you get. Some parties like Brazil, China also, I remember some other years, they just do hire, charter the whole Boeing 737 or so, 787, and bring even 300 delegates to the conference of parties, just one country. So you have those present, and at different levels, ministers, ambassadors. In some cases, you have the heads of state and government present at the conference of the parties, and then the technicians ourselves. But you also, you'll see that there are organizations that sit at the back of the conference of the parties rooms, and these are drawn from all these organizations that are listed here, UNDP, GCF, UNEP, etc. All these are observer organizations, and they have to be accredited, of course. The discussions, the negotiations, we follow some principles just to allow that, to make sure that everyone is treated equally, and every government, small or big. So Malawi, even as small as you are, 17 million or 18 million people, you are negotiating against countries that have over 200 million people, 100 million people, 30 million people, and we have small island states that have maybe just 100,000 people as their population, like in the Pacific Ocean. So every one of these must have that sovereignty and be treated as such. So no big ones, no small ones. And therefore, we have principles of equity. We want everyone to be equal in the negotiations, but also based on the principle of common but diversity, responsibilities, and respective capabilities. As I said, Malawi cannot do climate change justice just like maybe Japan can do. We are different, we're at different levels of development even. And so these are principles that are followed. And everything that we do, of course, should contribute to the achievement of economic sustainability, development, and poverty eradication. Now, going further with the groupings, because at the conference, you'll see that people are meeting in groups, and you, for Hendrix, a Malawian, is it from Karonga or Katabe or Zimba, you wouldn't want to embarrass yourself, and then you're found, you're going into a room that has a grouping of the small island states, for example, because then you're intruding. They'll chase you out. You won't be allowed, even the security want to allow you in. You wouldn't be happy to find yourself going into a meeting of the European Union, for example. So there are groupings there. These groupings are based on one, the United Nations groups. So you have Africa as a group. So Malawi belongs to Africa. You can go into a meeting that has the Africans are meeting. You have the Asian group. Obviously, Malawi is not in Asia, so you can't go to the Asian meetings. You'll be chased out. You have the Eastern group. You don't belong to EU, so we are not a member of that. And then you have the Latin America and the Caribbean states. This is Argentina, Brazil, all those, and the Caribbean states, Jamaica, all those islands, Grenada, they have their own grouping. And then you have, of course, Western Europe and others that are grouped into one. And these include Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Turkey, and the United States. So these are 5 groups based on the United Nations. So you can only then, at this point, be allowed to enter in a meeting that has that has Africans, for those that are discussing the African issues. And these are called closed meetings. But when you go to the actual plenary, then all these 5 groups will meet in one, because then they are bringing in their issues to present on the table in one meeting, okay, at the core. For regional groupings, so that you prepare your positions, then you only go to the group here. So again, you have those, the African group, the small island states group. These are the islands, about 43 of them in the Pacific Ocean. And the African group has now 54 member states, including South Sudan, and you have the European Union as a grouping as one. And you have their current presidency every year or 6 months that takes the floor, speaking for the EU. So what happens is that if you are speaking as the European Union, for example, the presidency of the EU at that particular time, at that COP, will be the one leading the EU in the negotiations. No one else will speak before the president speaks. She or she can only delegate then to the other members to speak on particular items. Similarly with the African group, the first one to speak in all matters will be our chair, the current chair, who is Gabon, and then we have thematic group leaders that speak on the agenda items, specific ones, and then Malawi and others will come in to support on specific agenda items. But we have already fed into what the chair will speak on, and then we come in to just add value to that. Okay, I remember in some conference of the parties, when you travel with new members, at times even maybe some cabinet ministers or so, they would want you to say, okay, Evans, speak, Malawi, speak first. You say, no, let's wait until our leader speaks, because that's the UN setting, yeah? So you have to wait for the leader to speak first. This is what is called the umbrella group, which constitutes these countries. They have got their own group with a different ideology. Australia, Canada, Iceland, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, the Russian Federation, Ukraine, and the United States. And you know that this group is I think, the most difficult of all the groups in the Climate Change Convention. And a number of these, Australia, Canada, Japan, the Russian Federation, and the United States are not party to the Kyoto Protocol. They have not ratified the Kyoto Protocol. Some had ratified, but they pulled out in 2012 in Doha. So they are not party to the Kyoto Protocol. But you may note that these are the countries that have the highest carbon emissions in the world, of course, including China, which is a developing country. So there are political reasons and economic reasons why they have not ratified the Kyoto Protocol. Okay. The groupings, the member states, and also is further. So you'll see that everyone in here will be taking the floor on specific agenda items and speak. Now, in terms of decision making, you have the Conference of the Parties as the overall body that will take decisions at the end of the 2 weeks. And then this relates to the convention. So the Conference of the Parties relates to the convention agenda items. Then you have the Conference of the Parties also serving as the meeting of the parties to the Kyoto Protocol. Number 2, this body takes decisions relating to the Kyoto Protocol. And the third one, the same way, Conference of the Parties serving as meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement, will take decisions relating to the Paris Agreement. So you have 3 key bodies, the COP, the SMP, and the CMA. Now, you'll find that countries like Malawi were a party to the convention, a party to the Kyoto Protocol, a party to the Paris Agreement. Just like the rest of the countries in the world, minus those few that I've mentioned, it means that when Malawi is at the Conference of the Parties, then it has to spread out and participate in all meetings that cover the convention, the Kyoto Protocol, and the Paris Agreement. Now, if the numbers are small, if you only have 5, for example, delegates, you cannot spread out because each of these has over I think 30 agenda items every day. So you have 30, maybe 90 agenda items. Then you have 3 members, and this every minute they're meeting from 8 a.m. till midnight or going into the other day. Then you can't spread out. Whereas our other partners will bring their 100 delegates or so, and they can easily spread out to cover all the agenda items. Okay. Continuing to those COPs and the CMAs, then you have meetings also that relate to the SAMSTA and to the SBI. And these 2 are the ones that we're meeting in these 3 weeks, starting Monday this week until the 17th of June. And these undertake issues related to the scientific and technological issues here of the convention, the protocol, and the Paris Agreement, whereas the SBI considers matters relating to the assessment of the progress made in the implementation of the 3 treaties. In other times, when the need arises, we do establish an ad hoc working group, which maybe is given a time from 2 years or so to conduct some piece of work and finish. And above all, we have the Bureau of the COP, the SMP, and the CMA. This is a bureau that also makes decisions relating to how the Conference of the Parties will be organized and will be conducted. Okay, so all these for information to consider. You will, when you're at the COP, so you'll see that, as I said, there could be some heads of state and government present, some ministers, some leaders of delegations, some ambassadors from New York, etc. And these will be invited to a high-level segment where they make their statements, normally 3 minutes each or 4 minutes. And the president of the hosting country, like in this case the UK, will be with those heads of state and government, and then delivering their political statements in a day or 2. And the Secretary General of the United Nations is always present also and presides over those official level statements. Then you have meetings that will take place in plenary. These are open rooms that can take 1,000+ delegates or more. And if every country has a seat that takes, I think, about 4 delegates per country. And then you have those open meetings with the observers and the media, etc. Then you break down contact groups where you start talking about the specific issues, thematic issues in smaller rooms, and you proceed as such. So there are some meetings that are called closed. These are meetings of the groups that I mentioned earlier. Like if there's an African meeting, this is a closed meeting because an Asian cannot come into that meeting. Okay, and a reporter cannot come in because it's only from government. Civil society cannot also come in. Okay, and then work like that, where observers are allowed, like in some of these meetings, some stage. This is just for your information. You can read, but you also will note that at the COP, there'll be lots of side events taking place and exhibitions. And in this case, the MASP, I should think through the support from Scotland, Mr. David Jones and others, I think, I don't know if you're preparing to conduct a side event where you showcase what you're doing. It's always allowed, but you have to apply for a place and for the time. You normally have to apply, and then you are given that maybe 3 hours or 2 hours, one of the days, showcase what you are doing. Okay. The exhibitions, you also apply. You have a kiosk where you bring in your technologies that you are implementing at the country level, some success stories in a project or so, then you showcase, and then you are lobbying for further support, maybe from some government partners to support you implement further your intervention. For one to participate at the Conference of the Parties, there's need for accreditation and of course need for credentials, because this is a United Nations meeting. Not everyone will just catch a plane and travel. Obviously, you need a visa to travel, healthy passport. This time around, you also need your vaccine certificate. Is it COVID-19 certificate? And for one to be accredited, to be allowed to travel to Glasgow to attend this COP, then you must be officially nominated by your, in this case, government, through the focal point of the United Nations Framework Convention. In this case, Environmental Affairs Department, my director, and of course she has dedicated this function to me, so I always do the registration. We require some information, your passport, etc., ticket, all those. So we register you, and then you become accredited. Then you can process your visa, you can catch your plane, and then you'll be entered in the system of the United Nations. Then you travel to the UN, to the COP. Without that, then you cannot travel to attend. And yes, for government, like when we are traveling ourselves, for us to speak fully at the COP and take decisions on behalf of the Mali government, then we take what are called credentials from the head of state. So the head of state allows you, gives us the function, the authority, delegates his authority to say, okay, this Mr. Njerwa and others, maybe the Minister of Natural Resources, the PS or so 3, 4, 5 of us will be credentials to represent government at the COP, meaning that whatever decisions are taken there, we sign it to on behalf of the Mali government, and we have been cleared to do that. Okay. Obviously, for a delegation to be effective, suppose you have 15 or 5 delegates from Malawi, even 3, in any number that you have, there'll be someone designated as a leader of delegation. So all matters pertaining to the issues at the COP will have to be led by that particular person. Normally, this is the one that has been given the credentials by the head of state, and we have a country position that we align ourselves to, and to the regional groups, of course, so that we don't speak things that are outside of our regional groupings, and you do not oppose your own group's position, number 5, and then you consult where necessary. And if it's civil society, like number 7, you must be careful that if you speak what other civil society organizations want, then you must not, of course, be against what your own government is speaking. That's why we share the country position with you. Okay. So if you get accredited by us, it means you are registered as a party delegate, where party delegate means that you are going to the COP to represent the Malawi government. So you have to defend the Malawi position. Otherwise, you don't get registered, then you go as an observer. registered by whatever the Scotland partnership or so, then you can speak. But remember, you saw a Malawi citizen and your head of state or minister wouldn't be happy to see you or to see the news in Glasgow that a Malawian Hendricks in Qatar, for example, spoke something that the Malawi government doesn't have in its policy. That would be bad. We have seen in some other times conference of the parties, our colleagues from some other countries being recalled overnight back to their homes because they have said something against their governments at the conference of the parties. So you just have to be careful what you speak at the conference of the parties. There's lots of media coverage. In some conference of the parties, we have up to 6,000 or 10,000 media people covering the conference. So you have news all over. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, so yes, thank you. I think I'm done. I can stop here. I don't know how much time I've taken, 40 minutes or so. Linda or Hendricks, I can stop here and then I'll share the presentation and you'll do the reading for the other slides that I've not touched on. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Njerwa. And I'm sure everybody has had a very clear picture of what it is and what to expect when they are at COP26. And I'm also sure that there must be maybe some other questions seeking clarification. So I think I will do justice to invite members to ask questions or seek clarification from Mr. Evans Njerwa. This is an opportunity for us so that we can really, get all those